Hi guys, Merly here and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to share with you how to clone a tomato plant. Tomato is probably one of my most favorite plants in my garden. Since these tomatoes have experienced extreme heat, drought, storm, some of them got so stressed. And even though I took care of them, there are still some plants that are struggling right now. Also, I have some Determinate tomatoes, and the Determinate tomatoes have a certain lifespan. The idea is, even if you spend so much time in taking care of these plants, some of them will die earlier than you expect them to. Like this one right here, you can see that. This is blight. I'm going to show you this one. Well, the disease has reached the top of the plant. So this plant will eventually die and I will have an empty space in here. Well, it's only early August and I still have a couple of months to go in the growing season. Now let me tell you one of my secrets in planting lots of tomatoes. When my tomato plant dies, I replace it right away with a clone. And I can pick from any of the plants that are growing in my garden. Clone that plant. It will take me a few days to have that plant established, and then I can have a new tomato plant growing in the ground. This is an example of a plant that has been cloned from one of my tomatoes. This one is a Crimson Sprinter tomato that I put in this row because I lost the plant that was growing in this spot. And this one is now over 1 foot tall. And it's growing really good. Look at that. That's really pretty. It has 3 branches now, which is good. I planted this in the ground 2 weeks ago. Now just imagine 2 weeks and then you get over 1 foot tall plant. Now soon, this plant will produce flowers and fruits. That's a good deal, right? Now you are probably asking, well, how do you clone a tomato plant? Guys, it is very easy. It is not rocket science. This is the easiest thing to propagate your tomato plants. Here is another example of a couple of tomato plants that have been cloned. These plants have been in here for over 2 weeks. And look at the roots. See that root system? I left this cloned tomato under the tree and we got some rain. So that's why the water looks like this, but it does not hurt the plant. The idea that I want to share with you is like, how do you do this? How do you root a tomato? How do you clone it? These tomatoes are called Crimson Sprinter. These are round tomatoes. I intended to single stem this, and I actually did for a while until they reach the top, and then I will probably just let them, do whatever they like. But okay, so we will use this plant as our example. And I just got a beautiful Crimson Sprinter tomato. So, if you look at the stem of your tomato plant, there's a main stem. So this one here is the main stem. And then between that main stem and the leaf, you will say growth. This one is the growth between the leaves and the stem. It's growing about 45 degrees. Okay? It's what we call a sucker, a tomato sucker. So what you do is you cut off the tomato sucker and then you put this sucker in a jar of water. So you basically have to soak the bottom 2 to 3 inches of that sucker. And then after a few days, you will see some roots growing. And the roots will grow from the bottom stem of the tomato cutting that has been soaked in the water. Now, this one right here, you see this little guy, the little branch? This is also a tomato sucker, but this is only 1 inch long. So this is not gonna work. What you want is about 4 to 5 inches of sucker. Cut it out using a pair of scissors or pruners, and make sure that your pruners have been disinfected. This is the pair of pruners that I use for my tomatoes. Sometimes I use a pair of scissors. One very important thing that you have to remember before you cut that sucker from your tomato plant is to disinfect this cutter or pruner. I use a 70% alcohol solution. Isopropyl alcohol is fine. You can also use 70% ethyl alcohol. The lowest has to be 70%. It can be like if you have a 90%, that's fine. But at least a 70% disinfectant alcohol, isopropyl or ethyl alcohol, that's what I use. It can be any brand, like the brand does not matter. You can get the cheap alcohol solution that you can find from the pharmacy or from any store near you. And what you do is you can use a cotton ball or you can use a piece of cloth. You pour this alcohol into the blades of your scissors or pruners and wipe it off with a cotton or with a piece of cloth. So again, this is the main stem and this is the sucker. So I'm going to cut this sucker off the plant, and so this will become a new tomato plant. This is about 5 to 6 inches. I'm going to remove the bottom leaf because I don't want these leaves sitting in the water. If the tomato leaves will sit in the water for a few days, it will rot. And it does not really do any good to have it in the water anyway. So we'll cut this off like that. So I have this bare stem right here. The next thing that we will do is to get a cup or a jar of water. So this one has water already, and then I'm going to put my tomato sucker in here. You can put as many tomato suckers as you want in this cup. And then you wait for a few days for this tomato to form the roots. Once you see roots growing on the stem of your new tomato seedling, you can plant it directly in the ground. This plant is a clone of the parent tomato, and it does not take a long time to grow the roots. And so in a week's time, you will have a lot of tomato seedlings that are ready to be planted in the ground. I hope you will give this idea of tomato cloning a chance, because this is, I tell you, the easiest way to grow more tomatoes in your garden. If you learned something from this video, click that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you for watching and see you next time.